the recording. Hi, Amy. We already have 37 people join us now.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to be here with all of you. Welcome to the webinar, Nature-Based Solutions, the Good, the Bad, and the Youth Perspective, organized by Wageningen University and Research in collaboration with the Global Landscapes Forum and the Youth in Landscapes Initiative. It is so exciting to see many people joining, and on behalf of everyone on the team, a very warm welcome. My name is Irini. I am originally from Greece, and I'm currently working at the Global Landscapes Forum in the youth team as Youth Assistant Coordinator. I'm very happy to hold space for this amazing discussion today. And while I go on to introduce the amazing young experts, the young professionals we have with us here today, that they're going to take us through their own knowledge and journey with nature-based solutions, I want to invite you all to introduce or continue introducing yourself in the chat box if you haven't done it already. Please share your name, where you're joining us from, and what are your expectations maybe from this webinar. Amazing. I see a lot of people joining. I see some familiar faces as well. Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Andrea. Hi, everyone. Now, today we have the pleasure to have a fully youth-led panel full of young experts, and they come from really different sectors. So we are going to go through many different perspectives around nature-based solutions. And we have with us Julia Bethe, Francis Camille Rivera, Yokatame Kuzu, and David Mormont. In the next 1 hour, our speakers will share their perspective on policy and action on the ground around nature-based solutions and ecosystem restoration. And in the end, we want to share with you some tips on how to join the Wageningen University and Research Nature-Based Solutions Challenge. So stay tuned for that. Without further ado, I would like to start with our first speaker, Julia Bethe, who is the Policy Task Force co-lead for Youth for Nature and the project coordinator for the Global Nature-Based Solutions Youth Position Statement. Welcome, Julia. Julia is a climate and nature nexus specialist, holding 2 bachelors in history and biology, and having a master's in science and sustainable development and climate, land use, and ecosystem services. She is an expert in nature-based solutions, private sector actions on nature, agriculture, and international environmental governance. And besides her active involvement at Youth for Nature, she is currently also working as a stakeholder engagement officer for the European Biodiversity Partnerships. During Julia's presentation, I would like to invite you all to write your thoughts, comments, and questions in the chat, because we will have a few minutes after she shares her thoughts with us to maybe look at some of these questions. So Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm super happy to be here and joining you from France. So I am Julia. from Youth for Nature, representing Youth for Nature. And today I will take these 5-10 minutes that I have to talk a bit about the policy side of nature-based solutions and the youth perspective, and why and how we came out at the end of last year with a global youth statement on nature-based solutions through a coalition between the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, Youth for Nature, and Youngo. Sharing a little bit about our coalition, we have Gibbon, which is the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, working mainly with the CBD and on biodiversity, the Convention on Biological Diversity. There is Youngo, which is the official youth constituency of the UN Refugee Policy on the climate change side. And there is also Youth for Nature, which I'm part of. That is a youth-led international non-profit organization that educates, empowers, and mobilizes young people, mainly on the nexus of climate and nature. For the background of our project, at the beginning of last year, we had a thought that around all the nature-based solutions narrative, the young people and the youth voices were not at all at the table, at the decision-making table and at the policy tables, whereas it was talking about our future and about a potential big, powerful tool for our future. So there were this big gap in the nature-based solution conversation. So what we did was build a coalition around this view, and we had different steps. First, we decided during the IUCN Global Youth Summit to share an info brief for young people, first to understand what is nature-based solutions, not only from one perspective, which may be the IUCN perspective framework, the European Union perspective, but everything, and sharing first the concerns, the risks, but also maybe the potential benefits around nature-based solutions, and giving a tool and some resources for young people on this. And we launched this info brief. Then we realized that maybe a big position statement on policy would be also interesting in the name of young people. We cannot pretend that we have a voice for young people, so we decided that we could launch a survey where we gather as much as possible youth voices all around the world, from English speakers, French speakers, and Spanish speakers on nature-based solutions, and what would be the perspective, what would be their concerns around nature-based solutions. During this summer, we launched our global youth consultation about it. And after the consultation, we gathered all the responses we had and launched our position statement on nature-based solutions during the COP26 at the Nature Pavilion. It is a policy statement sharing some key messages around nature-based solutions from the youth perspective, from what young people have told us on nature-based solutions. And after this year in 2022, we also tried to leverage our statement at COP15 to link COP26 on climate change and COP15 on nature, and during different international events as well. So this is our release. I'm just going a bit quick. Basically, our statement is the view from 118 countries, more than 1,000 responses, and in 3 languages. It was very key for us to be as inclusive as possible and trying to reach out as much young people and young views as possible. We all know that the international narrative, the international policy sometimes lack of inclusiveness, especially around Southern young people, women, indigenous people, etc. So it was really key for us to reach out, although we know that we could only reach out young people with internet access, which is a big bias that we may have and to be aware of. Roughly, we have gender equity, and most respondents are under 30 years old. So most of our respondents have a strong to medium understanding of nature-based solutions. They are quite excited about nature-based solutions. This is what they told us during our consultation, but also they have lots of issues and have some concerns around greenwashing, monoculture plantations, land grabbing, impacts to indigenous and human rights, and some delayed decarbonization. So what is the key messages and what these young people have told us about nature-based solutions? First, NBS are not new. It's just a practiced by millennia by local communities, and just putting a name for communications and by international governance and international bodies and some private sectors as well around a concept that already exists and some frames that already exist. This is why it can have some vulnerability to greenwashing. This is something that really worried the young people we interviewed in our consultation, because of promotion of monoculture plantations, the commodification of nature, some land grabbing potential through nature-based solutions, and different impacts on human rights. Nature-based solutions must not delay the urgently needed decarbonization. This is super key. This grabbing of nature-based solutions only through the forest and carbon perspective, and it is very worrying that all the nature conservations, human rights are not fully considered. So biodiversity is not a side benefit, actually, and ecosystem integrity and functions must remain, and it should be. And in our statement, we realized that we could provide a couple, different suggestions for policymakers. First, young people are asking for a legally agreed framework for both CBD and UNFCCC. Just for fully acknowledgements, this statement was released in November, so at COP26. Now, since the UNEA definitions of nature-based solutions, this issue might have changed a bit, and strict binding safeguards and guidance are really needed because of all these greenwashing issues. And young people really said that they will call out for solutions. So that's it in our key messages from our statement. And what's next? So this is a big policy tool. This is the first one from young people, by young people, about young people on nature-based solutions. And the idea is truly to give this tool for young people to say, you can go to your decision makers, talk to them using these resources. You can also, this is also a resource for you to fully understand what could be the issues and the benefits from nature-based solutions at this term, because likely nature-based solutions will not disappear from international governance. Now, it's a very big, highly discussed narrative, and we will try to leverage our statement with some signatories in support of our statement, and we'll try also to continue as nature-based solution narrative is evolving really quickly. We'll try to change and to make evolvement in our statement, and based on the different evolutions, such as the outcomes of the Substa COP15 meetings that is happening this week in Geneva about nature-based solutions, maybe new issues or new benefits or new things from policy will arise, and that we will be we will work around. So apologies, a bit quick. I hope you were fully understood, and if you have questions, don't hesitate. I hope I didn't take too much time as well, Irene.
No, this was great, and it was also very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. I sincerely think this is such an amazing policy tool indeed. I was very excited to see the whole process of, you know, all these 3 youth organizations coming together and creating this nice form, and then making this consolidated policy tool. We do have some questions coming in the chat. Let's maybe go through them. So the first question comes from Eddie, Eddie says, were the concerns listed as selections for them, I assume the participants, to choose from, or was it free form entry field where they could put any category?
Well, actually, it was both. First, we've listed the most common raised issues around nature-based solutions, or it was the same process for the benefits as well. The main issues, such as land grabbing, greenwashing, all the issues, like the main ones from the literature, and we listed them and asked what are the main ones that we were worried about, and we also had an open frame for people to explain why or explain other concerns they had. And we also linked, beginning of each such question, we linked to different resources and tools for young people to fully understand the questions, such as the NBS initiative that also shared very interesting policy tools around nature-based solutions. We also linked to the IUCN website and IUCN framework tools for people to understand our questions. So it was both in terms of methodology.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. And then let's see the next question. So I see a question, two different people had the same question. They refer to the UNEA 5 resolution that formally adopted an NBS definition. And I think both of them are wondering if you feel that this definition reflects the concerns that different stakeholders and groups have around NBS, if this is going to be a useful definition going forward, and generally your thoughts on that.
Well, so this definition is, for those who don't know, is quite close to the IUCN definition, besides some wording differences. So it is addressing some concerns about having an international agreed definition, because it was internationally agreed by all countries who adopted the resolutions. At the UNEA, it was in February, March, I guess. So it is responding. We didn't have time to fully assess in group with our coalition what would remain the concerns. For instance, they're not fully talking about human rights and indigenous people in these definitions, which could be a concern if the frame and the guidelines with such definitions are not adopted. However, this is marking a step forward on nature-based solutions, meaning that they could internationally agreed, meaning that at the COP15 nature-based solutions, even the wording could come back in the new global biodiversity framework. For the record, it was removed in the last draft. And some people are expecting for it to go back to the draft with this new definition, meaning that an international definition is here. Someone worried that not enough guidelines would be here. So this is still something for us to assess fully.
Perfect, thank you very much. And we have two more questions that maybe we can also briefly touch upon, as they are both very interesting. So the first question is, if you're planning to build recommendations on improving nature-based solutions and avoiding the limitation that have been expressed so far. And the other question is on examples, simple examples that have to do with NBS and greenwashing that come to your mind. And the pair who is asking that says that in the Brazilian context is monoculture of eucalyptus trees as a solution to reforestation. So yeah, maybe you can briefly touch upon those two.
Yeah, so I think it could be answered together. What we are recommending in our messages is people must be aware. Nature-based solution is a very broad term, engaging so much stuff. It could be about forest planting, it could be about nature conservation, it could be about urban greening for better agriculture, like better food supply, stuff like that. So what we recommend is stuff to avoid when it comes to nature-based solutions. Otherwise, it's greenwashing or false solutions. For instance, the local people involvement and indigenous people involvement. You should not, nature-based solutions is not a nature-based solution if local communities are not leading the action. This is a recommendation. So this is actually greenwashing. Monoculture, I know some countries are supportive of having monoculture as labeled as nature-based solutions. This was an issue also raised with REDD+ frame, and this is not a nature-based solutions. The ecosystem restoration is side part is not here, or ecosystem conservation. The biodiversity integrity is not respected here, and it's still in part of a very exploitation thinking. So this is greenwashing actually for the frame that we're reading nature-based solutions from our side.
Thank you. No, this is very clear. Thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts, Julia. There is one question which is more like, I think, on how somebody can use this toolkit, because someone is asking if there is an upper limit for signing up for this. But I guess this toolkit is now available to everyone, right? Like the survey was for young people, but now the toolkit is for everyone's use. Is that correct?
Exactly. The main target, of course, is young people. We're a youth-led community and we want to provide material and tools for young people. But of course, our survey could be supported by people above 30 years old. We are trying to reach out firstly young people because this is our community, but we are absolutely not limited. And this is for everyone. We are really in this idea of being inclusive and having everyone on board and having the same access to the same resources. So this is very important. That's why also we are looking for translating our statement as well and our resources.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Julia, and thank you so much for the time you took to also respond to all of the questions. And if there are other questions for Julia, you can maybe write them on the chat, and Julia can maybe come back to you on the chat, and we will also share the NBS document and some links to stay connected with Youth for Nature very soon. And with that, I would like to move on to our next amazing speaker, Francis Camille Rivera, who is the 2021 Wetlands Restoration Steward and is based in the Philippines. Welcome, Camille. Always a pleasure to have you here. Camille has a background in marine biodiversity and conservation. She has worked on different issues of coastal management in the Philippines for almost a decade and is now focused on blue carbon restoration and conservation within environmental organizations she co-founded called Oceanus Conservation. As with Julia, during Camille's presentation, I would love to invite you all to share your thoughts and questions for Camille in the chat, as we will have some time in the end to address them. Camille, welcome. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irene. I hope everyone can see. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So I am Camille Rivera, and I'm the director of Oceanus Conservation. Thank you for inviting me on this very interesting topic about nature-based solutions. And what I am going to talk about is what we've been working in our organization, and that's the restoration community-led action. And it's really something that we're close to our hearts to really go beyond the roots, which I love to actually tell everyone about it. And just briefly about Oceanus Conservation, we are a young organization, environmental organization, that we hope to conserve the remaining blue carbon habitats, the mangroves, seagrass, and contribute to its conservation and also restoration. We also provide environmental education. So we created ocean bilingual storybooks because there are just few that are in local languages in the Philippines. And we also provide community development for the Filipinos as well, in terms of alternative livelihood together in the mangrove, in the mangrove areas. Just a brief background about Philippines. We have tons of impacts, climate change impacts for the past 50 years. And just to show you an article about all the typhoons that we get annually, and we get about 20 typhoons every year. And the strongest we had was Typhoon Haiyan, and that was 2013, with a wind speed of 313 kilometers per hour and cost us $2.2 billion worth of damages. And there were 6 million displaced and 1.8 million people homeless. And that's how much typhoon we get. And with increasing climate change, and according to the IPCC, we get more extreme and intense cyclones, or we call typhoons, flooding and rainfall, and even sea level rise. And so this is something very scary for us, that we need to really focus now to do more climate action. And so the issue really here is that mangroves are supposed to, one of the ecosystem services or benefits that we get from mangroves is storm protection. However, back in 1920s, they were deforested for aquaculture fish ponds, and that's very apparent in Southeast Asia because of food security, or the increase in food security back in that time. So we only have 356,000 hectares left in the Philippines, and only 49,000 hectares is under the national protection for long-term conservation. So it's protected in the sense of national, but when there are local, because we're 7,000 islands, and you have to, it's not really all connected. And so some of the provinces there's some local deforestation happening because they need to use it for charcoal, they need to use it for using for the fish nets. Because mangroves are very strong and really useful for the communities. However, we need to restore them. Some of the sites, some are not restorable anymore. And so in our organization, we have this criteria that we created based on our experiences. So the first one is biophysical assessment. So when we look at an area for restoration, we check if the site is restorable or not. There are sites that are really low in terms of the inundation or the tide, and it's not anymore applicable to restore. And so we waste, time and effort, and it needs more labor to do. And so we check also what species are available in the area or what naturally occurring. So there's a difference between what was planted before by the communities and what is naturally occurring. So we really checked on what is naturally occurring in the area. And so we check also some sediments, we check the pH, we check the salinity, because it changes on what species is applicable on that area with the salinity that you have. And the second part or criteria is to involve community and the presence of an active community association. And the reason why is that not just us in the Oceanus, that we're like a small team, but basically community get more benefits in the long run when the forests grow. And so they also get all the benefits, like they can create ecotourism, they can get livelihoods such as crab culture or some other educational awareness in the area. So they can have tons of activities they can do. And that's the reason why we need to involve them in our restoration work. And the third one is institutional support. And this is very critical in most areas in the Philippines, because mangroves are deforested until now because of coastal development, like hotels or airport, or there are many issues like that. And what we need to talk with the local government and we discuss with them is to make sure this is protected and for the next 5 years, 10 years. And so with this criteria for our restoration, it's more impactful and more successful with our restoration work. We also have fair share of challenges with restoration, but as long as the communities are involved in local government, everything else is easier to do restoration. So our project sites in total, we are spread out, and in total, we are assisting the protection of 240 hectares of mangrove forest. And there's one site that already asked us for assistance, and that's a 60-hectare of abandoned fish pond in Mindanao, which is in the south. And how we approach this is that we're very different parts. Like first, we do mapping and database collection. We check what are existing in the site. We have a lot of communication discussion with communities and local government. The second one is we really build trust among communities, because in order for them, we come across communities that don't want to do anything. And that's very hard, because building, changing behavior is a long process. And I think we don't have time for us to it's hard to break that barrier. I think we need more people to focus on that behavior change. And I think for us, we need more people. Basically, we're like understaffed for doing that. But the most important thing is that we inquire and ask their need. And by listening to their need, they are able to trust us in the long run. And also we build local government partnerships. Then after that, we train ecosystem-based restoration. So we conduct training and also include their local knowledge. So we connect science-based and their local knowledge so we can implement the area. So for example, there are areas they say like, oh, this was we tried like 5 years of planting, but it doesn't work. So many things like that that we take into consideration, because we have to ask what did they do before. So a lot of historical context. And then there are intergenerational activities, like they have their son and daughters go with us when we plant, which is amazing, because then the young people get to see what their parents are doing. And aside from that, we also add community incentives, because every planting is for them very important, but as well as it's an additional income for them as fisher folk or farmers. So for us, it's important that we give them incentives to help us also. And we also create localized restoration manual. So recently we were able to do that using the local language and really involve a lot of public. So when we do some mangrove art workshop, so during the time last year, we're able to involve some young people to what is mangroves for you. So those kind of things that we try to work on. And just to show you what we've done in some of our sites in Aringay, this is a highly intensive fish pond areas. And so it was a very challenging to find priority sites. But we were able to work with the government and have a signed memorandum of agreement to protect and restore some of the areas for 5 years, which is amazing. So we're already starting 0.5 hectares of fish pond that we try to show other people, like showing them that this can be done, like a POC, like a proof of concept. And if you see the right picture here, the area here is inundated with, so saturated with so much water. And so what we did was to create mounds, and this local fisherman put some mangrove such as rhizophora, because rhizophora can create, or like the rhizophora roots can act more like the sediment to gather more sediment. So then it can have more other species that can go into. And the other species that are occurring in those areas are Lumnicera, so another species that we're planting as well. So we're doing different species, what is naturally occurring in the site. And the second site that we had is a very different site, which is an open, like exposed to waves. And so what we did, aside from mapping and assessment, is also asking the perceptions of the community, like, what do mangroves mean to you? Have you done any training, or have you received any training? What do you need in the end? And I think one example that they actually mentioned was the restoration manual, because sometimes they were trained, but then they forget what to do anymore, what to do or how to plant. And so we're able to establish a nursery, planted 2,000 Avicennia seedlings, which is the seedlings that are occurring in like a front line, like pioneering seedlings. And we also tried the bamboo style, wherein we put the seedlings inside a protected bamboo case, because again, it's exposed to wave, but it's actually a mangrove area before, but just with challenge with restoration. And so this is just an example of the restoration manual that we did, very localized. When do you plant and what moon? So because moon can affect the survival of your seedlings. And then if it's low tide, how do you arrange the seedlings? Basically, most people do like a straight line, and I think straight lines doesn't make sense, because when the waves come, they just go through. So it's a bit of an objective, asking the objectives with the communities, like, what do you need the mangroves for? Is it for storm protection? And so we try to like create some design to how to plant them. And so this is the manual that we give them later on, and guiding them how to monitor afterwards. So this picture here is a monitoring guide. So these are just examples that we've done in our sites, and we're now expanding to a lot of sites, mostly abandoned fish ponds, because this is highly these are mangroves before that were deforested. And so we have to really check and assess if they're still restorable. And there are some sites that are. And so these are the planting in these areas together with the communities, because communities do not know what to do with them already. So what we're trying to do in one of the sites is to merge shrimp culture together with mangroves in the middle of the area. So having more natural flow of shrimp and crabs rather than intensive culture of like fertilizers and what else they add on the area. So that's it on my presentation. Thank you for the, I hope I didn't take so much of the time. And yeah, so actually we're open for any partnerships and volunteering, and you can just message us with this email. Thank
Wow,
you.
Camille, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to learn more every time. Every time I think I know your project, then I hear you again, and there are more things that I need to know. So this is great. There are so many questions in the chat. So apologies, I'm just gonna pick some to answer now, and then maybe Camille can come in the chat and respond to the questions that are there, the ones that we want to address. So let me start. There were also, sorry, I have to mention that there were like quite a few people from the Philippines here supporting and asking things, which is always lovely to see. So let's see a question here that asks, what is the most challenging thing for your organization during the process? For example, what are the main obstacles for restoring mangroves? And if we can go briefly through the response, then we can, get more questions.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is actually getting the communities and the local government involved, or like have them aligned to the objectives of what we, for example, we were so idealistic sometimes and we wanted like, oh, let's get this X number of hectares, and then you end up going to the ground truth in the area, and then it ends up like, oh no, you cannot do that because we have plans for that. And so those are the challenges that you have to assess also, and try to work with the government, like at least save this area because it needs to be restored with the typhoon. For example, it's really site specific. So if you are in areas that are typhoon stricken, highly typhoon affected zones, then we need to put more emphasis on storm protection. If you're in areas that are Aringay, for example, that are highly flooding and food security, then you have to attack or negotiate more on this one will create food, or this one will having mangroves will reduce flooding. So there's very different way to get more negotiations with government, but most instances you don't get what you really want, but at least we're able to align. So I think those were my challenges working with restoration work. Yeah.
This is great. And I think you also touched upon, there were two questions mentioning how you work basically with governments and if you do advocacy efforts, or more specifically, maybe this is something that you can also respond in the chat for this person, because they're asking what kind of governance arrangement do you suggest in order to ensure successfully restoration of ecosystems. Maybe you can briefly chat upon it, touch upon it, and then go more specific for the Philippines in the chat.
Where is the question?
So the question is, what kind of governance arrangement do you suggest in order to ensure we successfully and sustainably restore ecosystems?
So I don't know any like how politics is, or but when we did when we started the restoration work, or how we work with governments, it's basically starting first with we do a negotiation. Let's say we say like, oh, let's try this for 2 years. For example, in Aringay, it's more like because they wanted food security. So you really have to listen to what they need first before you say like, oh, we need to restore, So what do they need? And so they wanted food security. And so you have to work with them in a way that you can still restore, but at the same time provide food security. And so part of that project is a shared resource. So they will give, for example, in-kind support, for example, a venue for training or food or meals when we go to the field, and then we do our support for training. We do our like, let's say we pay them, incentivize them for planting. So it's a bit of shared resource. So that's part all in a memorandum of agreement. So there's a really set rules in that agreement that we have to do with the government.
That's great. I'm very happy to see a lot of people asking very specific questions for the Philippines. So I think I'll allow you to go to the chat for that.
Okay.
But there is a last question that I would love to hear from you. Somebody asked, Lindsay asked, what does your organization need to scale its efforts and impact? So yeah, I'm very curious to hear that as well.
I think as any other small organization, is
exactly
funding in order to scale up. Because even if we have partnerships already, like one site wanted to restore 60 hectares of fish ponds, for example, but we haven't done any ground truthing. And so to be able to go there and do some assessment, we need funding to go there and do some scale. But it's easy to scale because these are our community partners, right? So it's just easy to have to go to the site, work with the communities. Okay, let's plant this, and then go to the other site. And so they're already leading it, which is amazing. Even in Salay, in one of our sites, they're doing it themselves. They invited, like youth organizations, and they plant and they monitor, and they just tell us like, oh, this amount, these are the mangroves that survive. So they already know what to do with that, given the restoration manual. So yeah.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Of course, funding, the ever needed funding for these things. Thank you so much, Camille. Please go to the chat, because I think some people really interested in the manual, restoration manual you discussed, and also have very interesting questions for the Philippines landscapes. Thank you so much for your intervention and time. And thank you everyone for your question. This is going great. So I would love to move now to the next amazing speaker we have with us today. So Yokateme T. Kuzu, which I hope I pronounced the name correctly, is a passionate agripreneur and founder of the Mabele Agric, who it's all about contributing to a resilient and sovereign food system in Africa through agroforestry. He is representing a team of people, the co-founders of Mabele Agric, who are all passionate about the sustainable development of the food systems and for being as environmentally friendly as possible. Welcome, Yokateme. We would love to hear from you and your friends.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good. Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. So I'm here. These are my colleagues, my collaborators. They were really excited by the opportunity we had. So they wanted to be here with me. So that's why we're all here and are participating to the talk. So I'm just gonna quickly share my screen.
Perfect. You can see your screen now.
Okay. Yes. All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Yokateme from the DRC. For about 3 years now, we've been working on a really interesting project, and it's a really big opportunity for us to be able to show it today. So today I want to take you to the savannas of DRC. We call it Plateau de Bateke. It's, DRC is in Africa, Central Africa. We're somewhere in the western of DRC, and it's a very flat land. It's beautiful. Farmers love it. You've got grass tall as 2 meters high, You've got in the past you had a bit of plenty of forest, but now most of it has been deforested. It's a sandy soil, weakly acidic, but farmers love it because it rains. You know, it rains a lot in this place because it's really high. Temperature isn't that hot as the rest of the country. So you've got a lot of smallholders that have decided to run their activities here. Most of them are into staple foods, you know. They will plant either cassava or maize or peanuts, you know, during the rainy season. It's all rain fed. They do it simply, you know. The first thing they'll do is slash and burn the whole grass down. They just light up a fire and the whole grass goes burnt. After that, they'll have a tractor they hire and then it just tills the whole land, you know. After that, they've got a clear land, they plant, and then it's done. The system worked perfectly, you know. Farmers were getting as much revenue as they needed, you know. They were, let's say, producing about 55, 60 bags of cassava. That was about 5-10 years ago, you know. But things are not the same anymore. Right now, plenty of farmers across the whole of DRC are reporting reduced yield, you know. This table, I took it from a really interesting paper that was published in 2019, so recently. And it shows that on average, the yield reduction is about 23%. But in some places, it went up, not too many. In others, it's up to 77%, you know? And the reasons are simple. With continuous tilling, you know, the soil health has reduced. On top of it, labor has become more expensive because many people are moving into those village area or the plateau. But tillage that was done to reduce weeding has actually resulted in increased weeding. So instead of weeding twice per season, farmers now have to weed 4 times per season, you know? On top of it, since there's more farmers now, small-scale farmers have difficulty finding tractors. So when you couple all that, farmers have reduced yield, but they've also distracted the land, and they don't amend the soil, they don't fertilize. So it's just planting, weeding, and soil has impoverished. On top of that, low reduction, not enough money. And they're stacking it. They keep doing it every season. I know it's because my mom is a small scale and she just keeps doing it every season, but they're hoping for a way out and they still haven't gotten it. And we just hope that with what we've got, they can get a way out. So what we're proposing them is as simple as agroforestry, you know? The first thing we're telling them is that, you know what? You need to stop degrading your own land. You need to add some diversity to your field, and you need to find a way to get your land to the initial state it was, you know? Plant trees in your edges, and then change your cropping system in a way that it becomes less detrimental to the environment, less costly, and it can also make you more money. We've got 4 pillars in what we do. The first pillar is no tilling, you know? I told you guys the soil in Plateau de Bateke was pretty weak, you know? You don't actually need to till it, but they are used to tilling it. So what we do is we gather farmers and we help them with weeding the land before planting. They're not gonna till it, they're just gonna weed it, the land. This helps them because it's less costly for them. And on top, they don't have to wait for the tractor to come. They could do it in their own land before the tractor comes. Since waiting for the tractor takes too long, it allows them to start planting at the beginning of the rainy season. After that, it incorporates some fruits. Here, the principle is simple. They mainly do cassava that takes 12 months, you know? After 12 months, the yield and revenue is between $2,500 to $3,000, you know? For 12 months, it's pretty little, you know? On top of it, it's not sure because, you know, sometimes they might miss the planting season because of a tractor and so on. So we tell them, try fruits, because fruits, they are just a little bit much more profitable than cassava. and it's going to take the same amount of time and the same type of cropping system for you to plant them. On top of it, if you do fruit, you won't have to run your project on a big field. You could do it on a smaller scale, so you're gonna need less hand labor. So for that, we've run a bit of soil analysis on a very short field, very small field, and we could link 2 to 3 specific fruits. We had pineapple, papaya, and banana that were quite appropriate for the land. So after that, we explained them that all the vegetable material that you have is actually biomass that you could use for your field. You could use it in 2 ways, either as mulching. So after weeding it, instead of burning it or something, you just put it around the plants so that it could maintain moisture, and it will also be a way for you to reduce weed growth. And this is how you could do it on a bigger scale. But instead of also using it as mulching, you could actually use it as a biochar. So here, you're not burning it as you would before, but you're actually burning it in a pyrolysis so that you reduce the amount of smoke that gets out. By that, you produce less greenhouse gases and you produce more and better quality biochar. You just take that biochar, apply to your plants, and it's gonna make it grow better. And after that, you've got some indigenous trees, These tree species grow in your field or in your forest nearby, but they have interesting biodiversity capacities, but also agricultural properties, because some of them are biopesticide like neem. And some of them are also therapeutical because they're using medicinal, traditional medicine, So by planting them, you can improve your biodiversity, but you can also make sure that you diversify your revenues. So we teach them all that. And then at the end of the project, what we do is that on top of producing on top of agricultural production in terms of fruit, we also make sure that we supply the farmers with seedlings of trees so they can start the agroforestry system. But on top of it, we supply them with suckers of pineapple and some seedling of papaya so they can go on and start their own production system. And this is what we do. And we're really hoping by that we can improve farmers' income, but also we can help maintain the biodiversity of Plateau de Bateke. Thank you very much.
Wow, this is fantastic, Yokatema. Oh, what a nice picture here in the end. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. This is indeed such a great statement. And it was also amazing to really see, for me at least, as a person that does not know how to restore a place, I think it's fantastic to see your work and how like everything is well connected, that you are including the community in that you're making sure that food security, food sovereignty is part of this project. This was such an interesting talk, and we have a very nice question in the chat. Let me go back and find it. Also, kudos for the fantastic storytelling, Yokateme. I was really captured in the beginning when you said, I'm going to take you to the savannah now. And I'm like, I am ready for this. So the question is, how was this process of basically convincing smallholder farmers to let go of fertilizers and other chemicals? Did it require a lot of conversation? Were they open on agroforestry? How did you approach them? And how did you persuade them, basically?
That's actually good, hey? It's actually good because you know what? The first hurdle we had when speaking to them was the fact that they look at you, they're like, hey kid, you just came here like a year ago. What can you teach me? So that's what they look at you. They're like, you cannot not teach me. But with farmers, I'm a farmer, so I know that the best way to teach them is to show them. And then after showing them, the best way to teach them is actually to show them that they can make more money because they're trying to do something for their families. You see? So at first we tried talking to them, it didn't work. we went to work. You see, we started our experimental field. And then we had one or two coming, engaging in a discussion. And that's where we opened up and we were like, okay, you know what? You can do this, it can help you. They understood everything. And it was easier for them to shift because most of them, as I said, did not use fertilizers. They did not use chemicals because the only thing they did was burn, plant, weed, and wait for the rain. So it was easier for them to change. But one big problem was convincing them that they could plant fruit. Since for them it's a problem because they have transport issues. After when they have the cassava, it's dry. They could wait up to 3 weeks, even a month for the transport to come. If they have fruits and it's wet, as soon as they wait, it rots. So you had to make sure that you find a way to explain them that we will come up with a solution on time for you not to waste your money. So that was the biggest problem. The other biggest problem was telling them that, you know what, I need you to spare 10 to 15% of your land to plant a tree that's, according to them, doesn't worth anything for agroforestry. You see, the trees we're asking them to plant on the edges, you know. So I'll have to say that that's still a process. You know, some of them accept it, some others aren't. So we're still working on that side. You know, on the other hand, since we don't have too many seedlings, it's a big of a problem for them to, you know, start over their own nursery. But I know it's gonna worth it.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is such a great example of including basically the community, the people that live in the landscape, into everything that you want to achieve. I'm wondering the same question that Camille was asked. What would you say is something you would need, like, or some things that you would need, your organization would need to scale up your impact? Like, is this something that can be applicable somewhere else? Can other people do it? What would your organization need to continue doing what you're doing?
No, that's a nice question too. You know, I think the first thing is going to be technical. Right? Technical. Look, we're working with farmers that are around a radius of, let's say, 30 kilometers radius. We are assuming that the soil is the same because it's still plateau de Bateke, but it's not, you know. And the simplest thing we could do is run soil analysis on every field, but we just don't have the resources to do that, you know. So if it's not going to be funding, it's okay. Can we be allowed to, or have the support to run as many soil analysis as we can? So at least we are sure that every time we're proposing a fruit to a farmer, or even the trees for agroforestry, they will grow, they will be adapted to his field, you know? So that's one of them. The other one is the issue we have right now is, I said, transport issues. We have a problem with transport issues, you know? So if farmers know that their produce will be transported on time to the market and it's already available, it's going to help too. So on top of that, of course, for us to scale up, we need a bigger nursery. We need to get more plants, more trees, you know? So of course, funding comes in play, but technical and transport will be extremely important for us to help more people.
This is very clear. This is very clear. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts. There are also some questions for you in the chat that you could go and maybe respond to these people directly. And we will also be adding some links, how people can stay connected with you. And yeah, I really hope we can also stay connected. I'm very interested in this story. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you to your friend as well. That are there to support you. This is so sweet to actually see. Thank you, guys. And then let's move to the next and last but not least person in today's speakers list. David, who also worked along with the GLF team to prepare this webinar. So David Mormont is the co-organizer of the Nature-Based Solutions Challenge run by Wageningen University and Research and he has some amazing announcements to share with you. So I would love to pass the floor to David. Yeah.
Yes, thanks a lot, Irene. So just to quickly check, you are seeing my screen, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thanks again for introducing me, and also first thanks to all the other speakers for their great and very interesting nature-based solutions projects, and to the audience for asking all these brilliant questions related to the projects. I really think that all these presentations, that they are a form of inspiration for you to participate in the nature-based solutions challenge. This is a student challenge organized by Wageningen University, as you mentioned. There are also some colleagues from Wageningen University at this webinar. I saw Cora, Ignas, Miriam, so feel free to add if you want to say something else about this. And we are also really happy to work together with Yale and GLF and also other youth networks in this challenge. Well, let's dive into a bit more details. The Nature-Based Solutions Challenge, it is a student challenge for student teams of 2 to 5 students. And basically in this challenge, you get the chance to really implement a nature-based solutions project, such as the ones that are presented today, at your own chosen site. So you choose, okay, at what site are we going to implement our project, and what will our nature-based solutions project be? So what's the problem what we are addressing? And also, of course, as it is a nature-based solution, how will it contribute to the climate, biodiversity, society, and others? And well, prior to the real start of this challenge, we organized a series of webinars, including this one together with Yale and GLF, to inspire you to sign up for this challenge. Well, and as I said, the teams are of 2 to 5 students. You can form your own team for this. And there is a funding of 2,500 euros per team to really make your project into a success, and also mentoring. And the mentors, these come from the implementation partners such as Arcadis, Witteveen & Bos, BWZ Engineers. And there are also other parties like IUCN and WWF who are also supporting the challenge in different ways, such as being the juries and deciding who gets the chance to participate in the challenge. Well, prior to the challenge, of course, you need to sign up for the challenge, and we made a system for this, and it consists out of a concept note. In the concept note, you can explain about your project, so what your project is, why you're doing it, how you're planning to do it. Of course, a problem definition and a vision for your project site. So, okay, how will your nature-based solution contribute to the vision that you have for the project site? And also, how is that linked to the problem that you are tackling with your solution? You identify some impacts of your nature-based solutions project, such as related to biodiversity, to climate change adaptation, mitigation, and you can also think of your own impact pathways, so to say. Well, of course, it's good to specify a bit how you are planning to use the budget, and a timeline of like, okay, how are we going to make steps in this project to really get it running? And of course, to make it a bit more personal, it would be great if you also add some team pictures in the concept notes. Okay, then, so that concept note, you hand it in, and then the panel of experts, they will judge the proposed projects based on a number of items. One is the impact of your nature-based solutions project on these categories I just mentioned. The feasibility of your project, so okay, how feasible is the timeline, the planning, the problem definition, does it match does the problem definition match your nature-based solutions? Then two more very important points. What is scalability? So your project, it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be many hectares or anything, but the idea is that your project has potential to spread and to also be used in different areas. And I like, for example, in the presentation from Camille and Jokateme, you really saw that that projects are scalable, even though the current area might not be that big, but it's really a potential to scale up. And in line with the guiding principles to enable nature-based solutions to provide sustainable benefits to society. Well, that's quite a sentence. On our website, we refer to an article, and actually this is really linked to the to the points mentioned earlier today about the nature-based solution survey. So how these guiding principles or key messages, or however you want to call them, is your nature-based solutions project in line with them? So this was a bit on the content, and let's go a bit more into the timeline. So today is one of the webinars prior to the challenge. There is one more Q&A next week where you can also ask all your questions about the challenge. And you have till the 13th of April, 9 a.m. CET to submit your concept notes. Afterwards, there will be some teams selected to pitch their proposals for the jury. And at the 10th of May, there is the final selection of the teams. There will be 8 to 10 teams who are able to participate in the challenge and who will get the funding and the mentoring. And then from May till September, this is all 2022, so everything happens in this year, you run your nature-based solutions project, helped by the mentoring and by the budget, of course. In September, we have the finals, and there will be one team announced as the winner of this whole challenge, even though, of course, everybody who participates is a winner. And we have that finals in September, and we aim to provide the winning team the opportunity to be involved in COP27, to also share your project there, the lessons learned, the scale up to really make the next steps in your project. Well, some small follow-ups. So we have the Q&A next week for which you can sign up. Of course, the application, they are open till April 13th. You can apply via the website mentioned here. Also on that website, you find the concept note to be filled out for application. It's important to use that concept note so we can also compare the different applications and see all your applications. And last but not least, I'm really looking forward to all your applications, and also thanks a lot for all attending this webinar. And I would like to give the word back to Irene. So Irene, thanks for collaborating on this webinar, and I give the floor back to you.
Thank you, David. And thank you everyone. Thank you, David. Thank you, Yokateme. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Julia. Thank you all for being here with all of us today. And thank you for being such an active chat group, because, you know, sometimes in webinars, people are quiet, but nobody was shy today. You really asked a lot of questions. I hope you really enjoyed hearing about the policy perspective on the global level as prepared by Youth for Nature, Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and UNGO. And I hope you really also enjoyed the stories of Camille and Yokateme and their teams, because it really shows that young people are now, not tomorrow or never, like at some point in the future, taking real action on the ground. There are scalable solutions, there are amazing solutions that can be supported. And I hope you're also inspired to take part in this amazing nature-based solutions challenge by Wageningen University. This is a great opportunity to get connected, to be in the network of a great university that is working a lot on sustainability around the world. So thank you very, very much. I know this is always weird when it's global in terms of time zones. So thank you if you woke up very early for that, or if you stayed up very late to be on this call. Really, really grateful. And big thanks to Wageningen University and Research for collaborating with the Global Landscapes Forum for this little chat. Let's stay connected. You can find the links. Elvis is going to share some links where you can stay connected with GLF as well, and all the other speakers today. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of the day, and see you very soon in other spaces. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much for the great presentation. It was amazing. Thank you, everyone.